he's like, you know what? That's it. We just need to go to Africa to find wives. Audacity. Anyway, me being African, I was raised in Africa and I was also raised in the United States. So I have experience from both continents, okay? And let me tell you something. If you are an American man who thinks that going outside of the United States is where you will find a good woman, a good wife, because American women ask for too much. The ladies out here, man, they're just materialistic. They're Let me tell you something. It is worse. It is 1,000 times worse than what you think back home in Africa. At least for the country that I was raised in and the culture that I was raised in. Because here's the thing. African women, African young girls, we are raised to literally know that the man is the provider. In fact, a lot of African women don't even go to work. Their men are the ones who go to work and just bring the money home for the wife to budget. And if you think the women here in America are asking for too much, in fact, go to Africa. No, go get married. Because the way African young girls are raised, we are raised with so much knowledge about family, friendship, how to deal with lives. So when families in Africa see that their daughters have gone through so much learning and they have become knowledgeable of life and marriage and all those things, they know the value of their daughters.
Hey guys, hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So there was a video that went viral of this, I believe she was a Kenyan woman, who came on here to say, you know, 50-50 does not work when it comes to African women, because African women are raised to know that the man is going to be a provider. Now, I'm not saying that all African men provide, but that's just how you're raised and you grow up. Because me, I saw my dad, you know, supporting the family and taking care of the family. So growing up, it's just something that I knew, like, oh, you get married and the husband takes care of stuff and things like that. So she said that, and a lot of black women from here and other women were like, oh my gosh, she is right. And a lot of the black women from here were like, oh, you know, I guess we're the only ones that have been kind of taking and dealing with this mess of like men expecting women to do 50-50, while other women, especially African women, are over here enjoying because they expect their men to provide. So it was an interesting conversation because they were like, oh, so it's not easy to just take an African woman just like that. And I was laughing because, yeah, it's really true. We've been raised, as an African woman, I was raised that if you are not serious about somebody, do not bring that person to the forefront. Don't go and be like, this is my boyfriend, mom and dad, and just keep bringing different people and all that stuff. For you to decide that you want to take it to the next level, there's going to be some kind of meeting. Like, my brother did that with his wife. My sister did that where, you know, they sat down with my dad and let them know, like, hey, you know, this is a person that, you know, my brother-in-law sat down with my dad and was like, oh, okay, I'm ready to do this and takes the next steps to be with your daughter. My brother came and talked to my dad about it, and they knew the plan. So it's not something you take lightly. So when you hear a lot of passport bros or guys that are traveling to Africa because they believe that the African women are more easy, they're submissive and all this stuff, which is true to some point. You know, I'm very submissive in that. I believe if my man is leading, I'm like, okay, babe, go right ahead. Okay, you know what I mean? It doesn't bother me, especially when the man is leading right and he's doing what he needs to do. I don't have a problem with it. So she was saying that, and the comments were really great because they were like, yeah, so black women were like, oh, are we the only ones that are putting up with this mess of men not really providing and men, you know, just not stepping up to the plate? Like, because African women are not having it. And I was like laughing so much. So yeah, as I said, in African culture, when you are serious about someone you know, the person is going to bring that up and go talk to the family and let them know. There is steps that need to be taken. The steps can be consuming and they are costly financially because it may involve having to also travel to Africa, because people think that just having a marriage certificate here is enough, and it is not. You literally have to go and do something in the village as well to show people that this is, you guys are now together. Otherwise, when things come up, let's say that somebody passes away and you go back to Africa, they're going to look at you like, who is that? We don't recognize him. Even though you might be like, this is my partner, this is the person I'm with. They don't recognize that. And people can mistreat you. We had a family friend that went through this. Like, literally, they were married here and the person passed away. She couldn't go there because she had to stay here with the kids. And when the body was taken over there, the family over there were acting up. They were like, okay, why is she calling here? Who is she? Like, they were just like, we don't acknowledge you because as far as we know, you guys never came here. There was no dowry payments. There was no gifts, nothing like to state that you guys are a couple. So it's a big deal in that way. And African culture, a lot of them believe there's certain curses that come onto you when you don't do things right. So it's kind of this thing where you're like, oh, you know, I better do my part. I better do my thing because this might happen to me. So it is true. Growing up, I know I was always saw husbands providing. My dad was a provider, always took care of everything, took care of us very well. So that was what I saw around me. So when I moved here, I was like hearing things like 50-50 or a man expecting you to work and do all this stuff. Like, what? I didn't even acknowledge it, honestly. I was just like, oh, now I'm all for women empowerment, you know, taking care of yourself and working hard for yourself. I understand that. But in general, you know, if you are involved with an African woman, you know, we'd have that expectation that you got this and you got this down and you're leading and things like that. So it's just funny how a lot of black women responded and they were just like, oh my gosh, are we the only ones like accepting less and being asked about 50-50 because African women are not dealing with that mess. So it was an interesting conversation, you know. With African culture, for example, you discuss marrying the person. You talk to the mom and dad. The mom and dad goes and lets people know over there. And then there's a whole event. For example, for ours, you know, animals are slaughtered and there's a lot of food. There is negotiations where people literally sit down and they're going back and forth about the price of the woman. And I know some people can feel a certain way because they feel like you're selling a person, but that is just the reality. So the passport boards that are traveling over to go and say, oh, I'm going to get an African woman, they're easy. You might have to rethink twice because the reality is not that. Now, there's women that are trying to be like popular on social media and all that. Younger women who don't really care about that as much and they're not really following that strictly. So I understand that the passport boards can pick them up. But when you are dealing with a real woman as a person from maybe another culture, just know that there's expectations that are very intense. And it is no joke, guys. Like, you have to go through this. And any African woman will tell you there's steps that they have to take to be recognized that the marriage is legit in Africa, not here so much. Like in the US, yeah, you can have your marriage certificate, you have a ring on. But when you go over there, there's certain things like this. The way you move as a couple can be affected by whether or not the village recognizes that you guys are together. So the whole 50-50 thing always makes me laugh too, because literally like when you become parents, the 50-50 doesn't work quite that well because the work that you do as a mom, it's a lot. And if you're working as well, it's like the 50-50 doesn't work. You know, there's certain ideal situations where it seems feasible, but even that, like if a man is really making you have to even have that discussion, I would reconsider that man. Because baby, like when I met my husband, he was like, here's the wallet. Which I told him, I was like, we're barely dating. Why are you giving me your wallet? Don't do that. I might be crazy. But I get it that naturally he's just a provider and family is very important. And that's another thing that I, for example, really love about the Mexican culture. We have that in common. Like a lot of the men are just willing to really take care of their family members and take care of everybody. You know, it's just that's the way it's been done. You know, they don't want the woman. Now there's men that are, you know, more controlling and they're macho and all that stuff. But for me, I felt like things kind of smoothly just worked out because my husband has just been naturally that way. And he's never really looked at me like, we're going to do 50-50. It was more like, okay, you know, what do we need to do to keep things smooth? You know, when we had our son, you know, he was like, we had to come up with a plan. So I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to have to stay home for a couple of years until he got a little older because I didn't want him going to daycare when he was younger. And things like that. But now that he's a little bit older, he's like totally like, if you want to work, then go right ahead. And also it's needed. I mean, we live in California, things are pricey. So I do have to work, but also for myself, you know, and have that financial independence. But naturally, if a man is starting to discuss 50-50 and all that, and you know, they're not even thinking about later on if you do decide to have kids with the person, it's like the 50-50 doesn't work that well. So in general, yeah, I really thought the conversation was really great, that the lady was talking about. And yes, I'm naturally submissive. I don't mind saying that I am. I feel like if you got a man that's leading really well and he's doing what he needs to do and loves you, there's nothing wrong with being submissive in that way, you know? Sometimes people get the wrong idea about what submissive means. It's like if somebody's taking initiative and leading you the right way, there's nothing wrong with saying, sure, of course, you know, and things like that. But in general, I know that being with an African woman, it's no joke. It's like you don't take that lightly. Like the minute you decide, especially a person from an outside culture, and you want to come in and get with an African woman, there is things that you need to do. There's certain rules that you have to kind of follow. There is cultural things that you have to do. And so the passport boards that are going over there thinking that you can just grab, good luck.